I don't think Clemson struck out on defensive tackle in the portal.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, part-time host and producer over on 105.5 FM The Roar. Hey, thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network out there. And I love Locked On because, man, when I need something to listen to, I have a long trip, whatever it may be, I know that not only can I get Locked On Clemson, although I don't really like to listen to myself, but you get Locked On Clemson. And then I know I can go sneak in and listen to Locked On Gamecocks. I know, I'm sorry I said that, but you can listen to Locked On Bulldogs, Locked On Alabama, all these other teams, Locked On Miami, anything out there. And then when it gets baseball season, I can listen to Locked On Atlanta Braves. So a lot of really awesome shows out there. And, Locked On basically can keep you updated in the know on so many teams out there. It's really exciting to be a part of it. Hey, I wanted to tell you that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoffs, really national championship, is coming up this Monday, and FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action. So visit FanDuel.com and get your college football playoff profit boost every game day. And there's just one game left, Miami, Indiana on Monday night. So, and I'll go ahead and tell you, give you a little bit of a spoiler here. In the Roar Pick'em contest, it was 9-3, and I was one of the three that picked Miami. So I'm gonna go with the ACC here in the national championship game. I mean, they very easily could lose. Mickey told me that it was a ridiculous pick. Ben told me it was a ridiculous pick, but I'm gonna go with them. Maybe Miami can represent the ACC. Not that I really do that like SEC fans do, but today's episode, we're going to get into money, NIL, Dabo, holding on to certain players during the portal process, and also, did Clemson strike out in one specific position? And that's kind of where we'll look at right now. And that is a lot of fans have been saying that Clemson has been striking out specifically at the defensive tackle position. And I can understand that because, they did go hard after defensive tackle. They offered, or at least, tried to get 10 different defensive tackle players that were ranked or are ranked higher than what they currently have committed or signed from the portal. So the guys they do have are definitely valuable because it's better than nothing. And I don't want to say that in a disrespectful way either, because they're way better than nothing. So that's probably not a good, way of saying that. But there is some feeling that, that there was a lot missed out on. A lot of players that are on the list that just did not decide to, join Clemson, specifically from the defensive tackle position. Now, Clemson did get two guys that I think are better than just bodies, So I don't buy that Clemson just struck out altogether. They added guys that are talented and guys that have experience, and they really didn't land headline names. That distinction is probably what is causing some fans to be a little bit concerned. Clemson brought in Courtney Kelly from West Georgia with 3 full years of eligibility. And most of the fan reaction online has been positive. And yes, I understand he's moving up a level. I mean, really more than one level, if you count group of 5, right? But the 3 years is a big deal. And being able to have that rotational continuity, I think, is going to be a big deal. Then you add Marcus Strong from Oklahoma, who another rotational piece that has already been with a Power 5 program. So are they splash names? No. But was Clemson really empty-handed, or have they been empty-handed so far? I don't think that they've been empty-handed either. They brought in multiple guys at edge, multiple guys at defensive line or defensive tackle. And so they needed to do that because they were losing, more importantly, Peter Woods and Devontae Capehart. Still, there's one lingering missing piece out there because they were hoping to have Stephiylan Green. I think the original expectation was to have Amari Adams and Stephiylan Green be your two starters. So when you look at what the returning room has there now, Vic Burley, to be honest with you, I don't see much of a big impact that he's going to be able to have. To me, he is extremely slow and carries way too much weight below the waist. And I don't mean in a good way, and I don't mean for any kind of extracurricular. I mean, he's just overweight, and he looks slow and he looks heavy. And I've been kind of disappointed from the fact that he was supposed to be like a 5-star guy, but the upper body just seems to be lacking right now. Champ Thompson, there was rumors he was going in the transfer portal, and then his camp said no, they never did. Largely unproven. I mean, I don't know much to say about Champ Thompson other than he's on the team. So Heaven Brown Schuler coming from had good film, but he played at a extremely wealthy and expensive private school. So I don't really know the level of competition that he had out of Atlanta at the private school, but it's definitely not certainty with those three guys. The certainty that I look on that is returning is 100% Amari Adams. That's why he matters so much to me. Keeping him healthy, getting him in as a starter. He to me is the anchor. He is the one true high-end talent that you have now after Stephiylan Green leaves. And so you can build around him. And that's why maybe they haven't really struck out. I know you look back and they don't have a lot of the big names, like Tompkins, or like Briu, right? But to me, you build around Amari Adams, and then you work from there. Kelly and Strong can rotate in with Burley and Thompson and Schuler, and I'm not hating that group of guys, really. Is it the Power Rangers 2.0? No, it's not. Is the Avengers 2.0? No, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not. But they're not left with nothing. They're not empty-handed. They're not bare bones. And maybe this group can work well together, and these guys that they've brought in can be bigger impacts than just their transfer portal rating that we see right now. And you really can't go too hard on ratings, as we know that they're not foolproof, and they're the best guess by analysts who really, most of them have only seen highlight film and never really seen these players play firsthand. So we don't really know what we're getting in that sense. But we have to trust that the Clemson team can hit on some of these guys, So that's kind of the thing. I'm not really willing to say that they've struck out at defensive tackle, and they still have a few guys like Etta Mathis and the Desir brothers, from Florida State, which I know those guys are probably just really far out options at this point. It's going to cost a lot of money. From what we're hearing, defensive tackle is an extremely expensive position to fund and bring in a player. And, Dabo's trying to do this on a budget, balling on a budget, if you will. So Clemson's not going to overspend in any position, really. So Amari Adams has to be the guy that we expect him to be, and the group has to be able to function alongside of him. That's kind of how I see the defensive tackle position for 2026. Let me know what you think in the comments, and when we come back, we'll continue the discussion about the guys we brought in from Clemson, specifically with fighting off tampering from other teams right here on Locked On Clemson. Hey, the college football playoffs are still here. One game left, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action during game day for the playoffs. So, because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel gives users a profit boost waiting for them in the app. And here's what you can do: you can go with the favorite, which I believe will be Indiana, or you can go with the underdog, which would be Miami, or you can build some sort of parlay around players and specific situations and moments that you think will decide the game. But either way, any way you want to shape it, you can apply a profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, you know how FanDuel does, they pay out instantly, which is great for this type of quick turnaround postseason game. So FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. Visit fanduel.com and get your college football playoff profit boost every game day. Hey, thank you for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. Go to the link, lockedonclemson.supercast.com. I've gone in, I've logged in on the Discord. I've read a few of the threads out there, and it's a lot of action. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fans from all over the country are in on this exclusive Everydayer Club. You get ad-free audio, so you don't have to deal with any ads when you're listening to my show. And you get an invite to this Discord server so that you can hang out with other fans, trash talk other fans, learn about other teams, or talk to other hosts, or even talk to me. So you can hang out. It's kind of like our own exclusive group there. So go check it out. You can go to that link, lockedonclemson.supercast.com, or you can go to the link in the show notes for this show to check it out. All right, segment 2 here of Locked On Clemson. Portal success overall has been measured largely by the fan base and by myself as acquisition, just whoever and however they can bring in the best players possible. And Clemson's done pretty well overall, specifically on the defense. They brought in a lot of guys, and they brought in a defensive player of the year or freshman defensive player of the year in Luke Forelli at the linebacker position. And one thing that I wanted to make sure that we touched with on this episode is that bringing in a guy like that and then being able to hang on to a guy like that is much more important than striking out on any of these other guys. You know, it would be devastating for Clemson to land a player and then because of tampering or because of more money being thrown out there, then basically losing that player again in the transfer portal to go to another team. And we're seeing that where players are either not getting into the portal to the last minute, or they're getting into the portal, picking a team, and then they're switching teams. You know, that can be devastating for a team that's trying any way they can to get momentum in the offseason. And Luke Forelli, we've already heard that Ole Miss went after Luke very hard, even after committing to Clemson. So that could have hurt a little bit from the pocketbook because maybe Clemson had to pay Forelli a little bit more money. But the cost of doing business now is, in my opinion, worth it overall. Until they figure out how they're going to manage player salaries or player contracts and this tampering situation, which I hope they do sooner rather than later. But right now, it's hard to say. But until they do, this is how business is. If you really want these guys, you're going to have to pay them the money to not only come to your team, but also to be, fight off any kind of competition. Clemson has slow played the portal in the past, and it didn't really work out for them. This year they needed to go out after players they needed strong and quick, and they did. But they also have to protect themselves once you bring them in. And they've done really well with that so far. So Clemson has been aggressive enough to land players and keep them committed to their team. And that's more important, I think, than any of the list of guys that didn't get picked or didn't pick Clemson to transfer to. So the NIL and the situation that we're in is still very much a Wild West. And Clemson had to hold on to Forelli. They needed a strong linebacker, and they did. And that's a win for me. You have to be excited about bringing in a player like that, because I really wasn't super excited about Kobe McLeod. I didn't think he moved the needle that much. Fletcher Cothran, nothing to write home about either. Everyone outside of Sammy Brown and Jeremiah Alexander, I mean, most of the other guys left. So Sammy Brown is definitely somebody you could trust. Alexander's a guy who's getting better and being more trustworthy as well. Bringing in Forelli is a strong piece to the puzzle on getting Clemson back to being elite. Now, he should play better than Wade Wood has. So that would be an instant recruiting improvement on what Clemson had last season. So, yeah, maybe Clemson did have to pay him a little bit more or initially offer him something and then give him a little bit more money later on because of the Ole Miss tampering. But that's fine. You got to play smart football, and you got to play smart roster management now. Clemson can't afford to be asleep at the transfer portal. They can't afford to refuse to get into some sort of bidding protection, and you have to pick what wars you want to win. You definitely wanted to win that war because he's by far your best player you picked up in the portal on the defense. So you definitely wanted to win that battle there. If it hurt you overall and how much money you can throw at a defensive tackle, well, that's kind of probably where Clemson is at right now. Hopefully they can find one other one that will be willing to join the program and be a part of the rotation at defensive tackle. Hopefully they'll be able to find an offensive lineman, maybe one skill position player, one other additional skill position player on offense. But right now, Clemson is trying to do what they can with the money that they have in the best way possible, to kind of rebuild their team and improve it. Clemson is being very calculated with where they spend their money, how they spend their money, when to spend, when not to spend, and holding on to the players that they currently have. To me, with the desperate need to have a great offseason with no drama, holding on to those players, to me, was a non-negotiable, and they have executed that. So after today, this being Friday, the transfer portal entry window is done. So there's no more, you won't be able to leave your current team and enter if you haven't already. So sealing up this current class of what you currently have, you can count those guys as locks. Now, a lot of fans out there kind of get a little bit confused when I say today is the last day of the portal. Again, it's portal entry. It doesn't mean that they can't still keep going after certain players. Some guy texted me and said, or messaged me over on X and said, well, Morgan, Keith Adams Jr. left Clemson and he's got no team. He's going to be stuck out in the cold after tomorrow. Well, that's not the case. It's just portal entry is not allowed. So there's still much more time for a player to find a landing spot and to go on visits if they need to. So Clemson can still add more, and we expect them to do so. They still have spots available to fill. Also saw that they posted on social media they're looking for walk-ons. I'm not really sure if those guys will actually earn a scholarship to be a part of the team in the 105, but it does look like Clemson is at least going to try to bring in more walk-ons. Whether they're on scholarship or not, I think we'll have to just wait and see for that. So, all right. Hey, segment number 3, we're going to get back to that quarterback talk because there was a big controversy that happened this week in the ACC right here on Locked On Clemson. Hey, again, I can't explain enough about how much we're trying to get people to check out the Everydayer Club. You can check it out. It's just $5 a month. If you don't like it after the first month, no big deal. No long-term contracts or anything like that. But I think you will. You'll get ad-free episodes of this show, but you also get, the Everydayer Club Discord server where there's a ton of fans in there in this exclusive chat where we all can talk things, college football, basketball, and anything in between. Again, smack talk, whatever you want it to be. You can talk to other hosts. It's pretty cool. And when I go onto the Discord server, there are just so many people there talking constantly. So, whenever you go to these sites that you like, and, you got all the crazies and people that aren't really truly football fans, just randos in the message boards. Message boards are fun for sure, but think about it that way. You've got a whole server of people who really, are football fans, college football fans, college athlete or athletics fans. And, just having that small entry fee, I know it's something, so I'm not taking that away, but having that small entry fee helps us kind of weed out, the rando crazy people out of a message board. And we have the everydayers who really are smart and know their stuff and are great fans. So you can be a part of that group, and it's pretty fun for sure. All right. Hey, Clemson is betting on roster balance over paying a star. Now let's look at Darian Mensa. Okay. He waits, his group agent, whatever it may be, waited till the last day. They got money from their current team in Duke, and they waited till the last day to hit the portal. Now, Clemson, from my understanding, has not engaged in Mensa at all, and I think that is a good idea. I don't want to see Clemson get involved in that at all. That's Clemson's philosophy so far. The strategy for this year's transfer portal has been to not spend time on a quarterback. And with this Mensa situation, I think it's great to stay away from that as well. I don't really want to live in a world where one quarterback is making $10 million, eating up 50% of your revenue share that you can share across the team, across really all of your athletics. That's not roster building, in my opinion. That is distortion. That is extortion by that player. Clemson does not need to be involved in anything like that, and they don't have to be involved in anything like that, and they shouldn't. A functional quarterback can get you much further than a lot of fans want to give them credit for. A strong roster built around a functional quarterback will get you 9, 10, maybe more wins. I'm not saying it will win a national championship, but I'd rather spend money across the board for the roster to be good overall, up to down, than blow everything on one player, specifically the quarterback. And I get it. Oh man, everybody that's in the playoffs or in the championship game, they're all transfer portal quarterbacks. They all have transfer portal quarterbacks. I do get that statistic, and I believe that does matter. But the staff right now believes in Christopher Vezina. I believe Christopher Vezina can at least get you to the ACC championship game. Maybe he won't dominate any game. Maybe he won't dominate the ACC championship game. Maybe he won't carry this team like a lot of quarterbacks have to do. But then again, maybe he doesn't have to do so. Maybe the offensive line can hold up, the defense can improve, and you can get 9 or 10 wins, an ACC championship game. If you win that, then it's realistic to get into the playoffs. Playoff outlook, completely unknown. Probably limited, probably to the point where this team will need to get to the ACC championship game and have minimal losses. But right now, rebounding from where you were, getting back into conference contention is step number one. So I truly believe that Clemson needs to, it's a decent strategy what they're doing right now. Build around your quarterback, since that's one position that you're not as worried about as everywhere else. Since you have so many other spots that you're worried about, or at least concerned to improve, and the quarterback not being one of them, then just stick with doing that. Build around him. I got another myth. I got a myth or at least a myth that I want to address as well. And that is where my stance is on development. If Christopher Vezina does not do well, it's not going to be because someone failed him in development. If Christopher Vezina does well, then it's going to be fully on the fact that he was talented enough and was committed enough to develop himself. I'm not really big on putting all the ownership on to coaching development. Coaching development, helps organize, helps hold players accountable, helps deploy them on the field the right ways. But coaching development does not create greatness. Talent and work ethic drive greatness. So Clemson's approach to everything, to me, I would rather it focus on talent acquisition rather than some very difficult measurable of coaching development. And I know that not everybody agrees with me on that, but I'm very much against giving any sort of position coach a lot of credit. Do we sit here and praise whoever Tom Brady's quarterback coach was? Not really. Do we sit here and praise whoever any of the ace pitchers coaches were? Maybe, but not really. Most of the time you praise and remember the player, not the position coach or the coach that's out there behind them. I think at the college level, you make sure you keep them accountable, make sure that they know the playbook and what is expected of them and their assignments, and then you get the right players out on the field at the right times. But overall, if a player is not performing to the level that they need to, I'm not going to say that it's because they weren't developed. If Christopher Vezina does not have a great season in 2026, I'm not going to say it's because he wasn't developed. I'm going to say it's because he just didn't have the talent. He just didn't have it, and Clemson needed to go get it. So if that was the case, then you would also expect me to say who gets the ownership on that. Well, I would say it would go back to Dabo Swinney. He is placing his bet on Christopher Vezina. He is putting his money over there to a player and promoting loyalty and commitment. That's his quarterback. So if that quarterback does not work out, then it's on him. And that criticism for him, to me, is deserved if that were to be the case. But I'm also in the realm of saying, it's not fair to count out Christopher Vezina by any means either. He equally deserves a shake at this and a chance as anybody else on the roster. If they're not going to go out and get another quarterback from the transfer portal, then yes, CV deserves his chance based on the group that he's surrounded with. So Clemson has their strategy, has their game plan, and that's what they're doing. And if it doesn't work out, well, then, yeah, it is definitely on the head man in Dabo Swinney. But if it does work out, then you know what? His decision on where and how to use the money ends up looking really good at the end of the day, if it all works out. Hey, thanks again for tuning in to Locked on Clemson. That's the end of this week's show. This is the Friday show. So I look forward to hearing you and talking to you on next week, not Saturday, but next week on Monday. Subscribe and follow to Locked on Clemson so you get all the latest podcasts. You can check me out in between episodes over on the Everydayer Club or on X at the Morgan T Show. If you never miss an episode, well, check out the Everydayer Club. It's built for you. Locked on Clemson, ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head over to lockedonclemson.supercast.com to learn more. And for those of you on video, we'll send you over to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast YouTube channel. And on audio, you can make your second lesson. Go over to Locked On College Football and check that out. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you next week, and we'll see you at the top of the Hill.